Just a slight tangent on that.
This is far too much of a tangent. Just a brief interruption.
Can I also say one more thing on this?
But we also need to impose some rules. Like, we can't just have 20-minute tangents over a text.
Come on, that's just refusal to consider the circumstances. We're not going to entertain that, Joe.
This conversation is not a good one, I think. Do we argue much?
No, we keep them inside.
They'll fester.
See, I thought this was a ridiculous text until I read the top three, and then I thought, you know what? I'd actually debate that with you. It is an interesting... Sorry, it's not an interesting question, but...
Let's make that clear.
I love the sound of a snooker referee counting up the score.
Welcome along. Slight tangent. We're excited to be here on this Tuesday evening. Somebody was in touch last week to wonder, would we interrupt Ireland-Armenia coverage to bring a slight tangent to proceedings? We didn't.
It's a true story.
If you hang on to all. A third for Ireland, we might have. Mick McCarthy's here, Arthur O'Dea is here, Will O'Callaghan is here. We are up and running. This is, in effect, the hour given over to whatever we want to chew the fat about. Do get in touch, 53106. We're very much here in live. Or you can email us, which is very exciting. ASlightTangent at offtheball.com.
That's it, Joe.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was just slight tangent. A slight tangent.
He's obviously checking emails here.
ASlightTangent at offtheball.com. We had emails. So, for instance, we had one which started, I am sick listening to you guys nail down City for the league. Why? Arsenal have been top since day one. They're playing amazing football, and you haven't even acknowledged they might be title contenders. Regards, Gunnar Jerry in Westmeath.
Gunnar Jerry.
The politeness upswung there as that email went on. No matter how crabby the email is, I'm going to regards.
Like, does Gunnar Jerry really believe that Arsenal are going to win the league?
No,
is where I would start with that.
He knows.
He's seen this before.
If anyone tuned in and heard us talking up Arsenal chances in the league,
They'd switch off.
more than Gunnar Jerry emailing us. Jerry, the reason
Arsenal have been great, and they've been. Do you know what they've been, Joe? A breath of fresh air in the Premier League this year. But they're not going to win the league.
Jerry, the reason we haven't acknowledged that they might be contenders is we don't think they are.
Yeah,
the short version. If you're literally asking why haven't you, that's the truth, I think.
Possible second place run if they keep it up.
Another email. I'll get to the Kipchoge one in a second. But for instance, somebody had said, heard Andy Minton talking to you last night about United fans leaving the Etihad at half-time. And then in quotation marks writes, bunch of pathetic babies. Discuss. Thanks, Tom.
That's nonsense. Why should you just sit through that?
I support your team.
They don't need the support. They're grand. They
Desperately need support.
The thought they're beating the traffic.
No.
You gotta get something back. You gotta leverage something back for yourself after that.
Is there not something though, like, are you that tribal that you can't think to yourself, okay, this is bad and United are terrible and we're going nowhere, but geez, this Haaland guy, he's pretty special.
No.
This is a generational talent. I might just stay here and watch this guy score 8.
Not for the away fan.
Not
there the day he
not
scored
as
8.
a fan. Not as a fan. When you're there as a fan, what's happening with the other team or any kind of, like, there is moments, right? There's moments where you'll do that sort of like, I stood up and applaud, but you just don't care about what's happening on their team because you're just living and dying by your team. Like, I don't know, I'm just thinking of the All-Ireland semi-final this year. I was there. It was like anything Kilkenny did, there was lots of me thinking on Wednesday, Thursday, the following week, like, Jesus, it was great to see TJ Reid put in that kind of performance. I might not see that again in person. But at the time, I couldn't, like, absolutely not. There's nothing in...
Did you leave that early?
What?
Did you leave that early out of interest?
Half time.
Well, no, we didn't leave early, and I can't remember exactly why, but I remember specifically... There was I mentioned before that there's a Killaloe guy on the Clare team and there hasn't been a long time, and we were happened to be sitting very, very close to the tunnel, so there was just a sort of an element of just sort of wanting to say well done to him on the way out. But I've never seen anybody as dejected or sad looking as Shane O'Donnell as the players were coming in to kind of walk into the tunnel. That'll stick with me as long as I live. And it's funny because all the anger you might have, anger's the wrong word, but all the sort of disappointment you have as a person that turns up to the match to watch it, and you're thinking, oh God, so-and-so didn't play well, and then you see what they're actually going through and you're like, yeah, they care about this way more than I do. So I don't really have any... Anyway, I've gone completely off topic there, sorry.
Slight tangent.
No, I think leaving early is worthy of discussion, but I think the idea that you'd stay there to watch the opposition is nonsense.
I'm not saying stay to watch Gabriel Jesus put a number on you. This was Erling Haaland, almost really announcing himself in a big way. Like, this is supernatural.
That's the last thing United fans want to see.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
but are you
worse than
that
worse so you can
tribal?
watch it in telly.
Are you that tribal and pathetic?
Well, he's playing for Man City for the next 10 years and going to be like winning them 10 leagues in a row. This is a disaster if you're a United fan.
When I say pathetic, that you can't appreciate the brilliance.
No, not like
Always
for
beat
the
your
away.
team.
But the away fans there will be, I'd say, by and large, it'd be interesting to know the number, but I'd say by and large, probably Manchester locals, or probably to a degree. Is that still the case, I guess?
Yeah, for
The
away
season
fans,
ticket holder,
yeah.
I'd say so, yeah. So they're probably, like, they're not going to hang around. Like, they're not. And as they're kind of saying on
So would
Monday
you
Night Football,
leave?
they can go watch Man City anytime they want.
Would you leave at half time?
Well,
Where
no,
are you
see,
in a rush
if I was there and it's like, well, where am I going?
Yeah.
But if I was a local and it's like, it's game over, 4-0, yeah, maybe not half time, but
What about the argument so if you're on the one hand you can't have it both ways, right? So on the one hand you're this, it pains me too much to watch Erling Haaland because I love Manchester United too much,
Yeah.
but I won't stay and support them when they're having a bad game. Like, which is it?
it's not about supporting them. What are you going to do? Like,
Cheer them on.
it's over.
They nearly came back into it.
This,
It's the greatest rewriting of history I've ever heard.
Beaten by the clock.
sorry, Will, you probably want to come in on Joe's trolling here, but I need to right now first, because that's the part that gets me, is the support your team, because there's lots of ways to support a team. Like, the teams get booed and, you know, the fans will say, oh, you should never boo your team. There's a lot of football, I think it's mainly football, but I think no, GA is bad for it as well. There's a lot of sport fans who tell you how to be a fan, and it's like, you have to do it the way that I've been taught how to do it, and I've done it all my life, or else you're not a real fan. And I think one of those things is leaving early, because sometimes leaving early is a statement in itself. And I thought those fans leaving at half time, I think that there's a protest to that. I'm not sitting around here to watch my team be absolutely hammered by our local rivals because they're not putting enough effort in, or because they're not coached well, or whatever the story du jour is with Man United fans and what they think is wrong with their team. You know, I think it's an acceptable thing to do, I have to say, if it's done for something other than like leaving for traffic. You know, I don't know. Although traffic is pretty bad. Sometimes like leaving a match, you could be hours.
Arthur hasn't stayed for a full match in about 15 years.
I will stay for a full match, and I just want to put it on the record just in case. I'm not sure if they're mutually exclusive, but
I saw him at the final.
I can't stand booing.
Final.
You can't stand booing.
Booing. I think booing's unacceptable at any level ever.
Opposition or your own team?
Anything. It's the most pathetic thing I've ever seen among fans. It is the worst. It's such the sign of just a moron. It's like booing. It's like, are you kidding me? That's the one thing. Just in case, I'm afraid if they're going to be balanced up together as two things that are kind of.
I was just saying they're two things that people decide you're not allowed
But
to do.
I just want that on the record.
But see, it's a bit different to booing somebody in the street, isn't it? Like, it's part of the lexicon of a football stadium.
Booing, like.
Yeah.
It's such a words have failed me. I can't express myself any
Hold
other
on.
way.
So you're at the All-Ireland final last year, and I don't know, Kyle Hayes is running through, and he's taken, his head is taken off by Richie Reid, right?
Yeah.
5 minutes later, Richie Reid gets the ball. The Limerick fans are going to boo him. That's all part and parcel.
I'm not saying
nothing wrong with
I'm
that.
not saying booing doesn't happen.
No, I know, but
just
I'm saying to
it's
you,
moronic.
I wasn't suggesting. I wasn't giving you a scenario in which booing would happen. I was saying a scenario in which booing would be acceptable as part of, as Joe says, the theatre of the occasion.
Yeah, booing just right.
They're in a gladiators arena, and
I do have to say, I'm sort of with them more than against them on this. I really don't like it either. Why is sports so toxic in a stadium? Yeah,
I do think it can go over the top. It can go over the top toxic, but I don't know.
Like, football stadiums are a disgrace more often than not.
Yeah.
And you've fathers like egging on sons, and
Hold on, do we not
gestures
complain
being
about
made and-
football stadiums becoming too sanitised now, and that we don't have atmospheres at games? And if you wanted to get a legitimate advantage as a home team, for example, you would boo and whistle the opposition to try and put them off their game. Is not the whole point of being a football fan, is to go and try and give your team that slight edge?
yeah, I mean, I guess that's why it happens, I suppose. Yeah.
I like the flip side to people walking out. I was just saying this before Mick came in. I do find it remarkably entertaining when it goes wrong on fans. Like, take Real Madrid last year when it looked like they were beaten by Man City. Quite a few of their fans left with a few minutes to go in that semi-final. They get 2 late goals, and the fans had to watch it on their phones outside because they couldn't get back into the stadium.
So if you're at a
Miami Heat fans as well. Do you remember that in the finals?
George Best famously. '99.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Miami Heat, it was like they're all on interviewing local TV, and they're like, it's not our year, man, and all this. And next thing they get like their famous Ray Allen tree wins them the title, like and everyone's trying to. It goes to overtime, and everybody's trying to desperately get back into the arena, and they're just doors are closed, lads.
Like, I'm not pearl clutching at it. I'm not horrified by it. But I find if I'm at sporting events and you're near a bunch who are abusive, booing all the time, just like toxic, negative, ugh. Do you not
abuse is something else, Joe. You're adding something different there. Like, abuse is slightly different to booing or whistling.
All right, we'll go with abuse then. I mean, I'd say if you're booing, you're abusing.
I think it's.
I don't think anyone's like, well, I'll boo, but I wouldn't dream to say anything. I wouldn't go beyond that. I think it's similar ballpark-ish, no?
I don't know, lads.
Do you not find that toxicity in sporting grounds? We're just so hardened to it. We're just so accepting of it because it's always been around. But when you stop and think about it, it's really grim.
But I suppose it is what it is, though. Like, it is its own thing now. Like, I mean, I do think you have to draw a line, and I think that line is ever changing, and probably rightly so. But I think trying to take too much out of it for like some of the harmless stuff, like booing a player who used to play for your team and has moved on or left in bad circumstances, it's all fine. Like, I mean, everything doesn't have to be the most mature thing in the world ever.
It doesn't have to be maturity, but booing, like, what are you hoping to achieve?
Because you go to to go to a sporting event is a release from real life in certain ways. Like the fact that I care about a load of lads in one colour jerseys versus a load of lads in another colour jerseys, none of which I've ever met, like, is a bit stupid.
Yeah.
No, I disagree.
But it really matters, right? But it really matters as a kind of an escape, as a kind of a... And part of that is a bit of theatre. And it's like, in some ways, like, they're not real people in terms of, like, booing for, silly reasons. For something becomes real, something becomes about their identity, or something becomes about, something real in their lives or something like that. That's abuse. That's different. I think booing as part of it, as an opposition player, is fine.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I don't expect everyone to agree. I just find it a bit, grand.
Yeah,
not
you're
for me.
mature.
I'm not saying that either. And I'd also like to distance myself from Arthur saying they're morons and pathetic.
That's fine. Climb down from the ivory tower.
No, his words. But like, you would find, Mick, I'm sure, if you're at a local GA match or club match, or a fella goes to local GA matches, when there's like that group of 20 or 30 that are every referee's decision, every mistake, it just doesn't matter. It's probably, to your point, Mick, about a bit of a release. Do you not find that element sours the whole atmosphere of a club GA match?
It depends, right?
As opposed to a Premier League game.
You can get stuck behind or beside a bunch of assholes who are just incredibly annoying because in many cases they're wrong. Like, I remember Champions Cup final a few years ago. I remember Saracens played against Leinster in Newcastle.
Yeah.
And I was working the game as opposed to being there as a supporter of either team. But I ended up, bizarrely, what they had to do that day was the press were effectively in the stand with the supporters as it worked out. So I was sitting right in front of a bunch of Saracens fans, and they were calling for penalties continually and were wrong about the vast majority of decisions.
Yeah.
That for me is far more annoying than somebody trying to get on the referee or a team's back and I'm just beside them in a group. I think it's part of the occasion. It's part of sport, and I definitely wouldn't want to lose. But yeah, it's really annoying if someone is shouting personal abuse or something that's incorrect. Like, I hate when someone shouts at the referee when they're wrong about what they're shouting at the referee, for example.
Maybe without it you would miss it, Arthur.
I don't think so. Not booing. Booing just gets me. I can't stand it. But and look, there's a kind of that serious aspect. I still feel that same sort of crowd dynamic of just everyone buying into the one thing inevitably leads to nastier. I'm not saying you cut things off and that's it, but like, that same people that will boo as a collective will do worse things as a collective because it's the collective doing it.
Yeah.
And I just think that, like, that's not the conversation we're having. But I just inevitably, that's why I still think at the root of it, booing's just, it doesn't do anything. It's not funny, or it's not smart, or it's not.
I just wonder what I'm just trying to, and I'm not necessarily putting down what you're saying. This isn't meant to be this isn't meant to be like dismissive. But what do you do at a game? And I'm not saying that you should boo, but I'm saying, like, do you shout? Do you shout at players to try harder? Do you try to you have to? Geez, you had to get to that ball. Like, all these things that come out of your mouth are ultimately nonsense.
Frustrations.
But they contribute to 80,000 people making noise, because otherwise, what are they doing? That is ultimately what the noise of a stadium is.
That's not what we're talking about, though.
Well, sure. I'm just saying, but that's all nonsense as well. Like.
Man United jog out of the tunnel at the Etihad on Sunday and everyone boos. You're not a fan of that?
No. Like,
As opposed to the theatre argument. Like, I do sort of get what the lads are saying. We can't just have silent stadiums.
it doesn't have to be. You can cheer,
But you can't cheer Man
Why would you
United
cheer the
coming out.
opposition, though?
but what? But the teams come out at the same
You need
time.
to get those
No,
rattles that
they
you
come out
spin around
separately for their
again.
warm-ups. When I was chatting to Nathan pre-match, you could hear the boos of Man United have obviously walked out onto the pitch for their warm-up.
I mean, I just presume that's always just children. You know, like it's just
Definitely not.
Well, adult children.
Yeah, I mean,
It's that old cliche of, as you said, Mick, it's the release of Monday to Friday, life is a grind, here's 90 minutes to unleash a little bit.
There is another side of it, though, where it is the wanting to be seen and wanting to sound like you're making a difference. And I think that element of it is borderline childish, I would say. And I know I'm speaking against myself here, but you know the type I'm talking about that wants to be the guy who gets in the face of the player who hears him.
Yeah.
You know, like I want to be the one that gets close enough that you heard what I said there.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that is it's a bit of self-importance, I think.
Yeah.
Or we all know that one funny guy in a crowd who tries to shout the one thing that's half laughed at the first time, and then he tries to do it 3 or 4 times more.
Yeah.
You're like, just shut up.
Yeah.
They're annoying. I want them gone.
We're going to take a short break. We'll get through loads more in just 1 second. We're back with a slight tangent. Anything you want us to talk about, we have a few more bits and bobs to get through. 53106. Now then, you're very welcome back. Trent Alexander-Arnold has scored for Liverpool. 1-0 up against Rangers. 25 minutes gone. Still can't defend, of course, Mick.
No, score a good free kick every now and then, though. Don't be putting me into the anti-Trent brigade here, Joe. Come on now.
So, we were talking there about fan culture. We might park that because that applies to referees. We were going to talk referees, but we'll run out of time. I want to get to some other things. For instance, Eliud Kipchoge won the London Marathon at the weekend, and this happens every time there's a marathon and something brilliant happens, but it never fails to shock you when you're reminded of the numbers. So Nick Harris tweeted, if you want to recreate Eliud Kipchoge's London Marathon win at your gym tomorrow, get on the treadmill, and if your treadmill speed is in kilometres per hour, set it to 20.6 and then run for the next 2 hours, 2 minutes and 38 seconds. Or if it's in miles, put it at 13.1, 2 hours, 2 minutes, 38 seconds. And every time you see that, if you're running a treadmill at all, it just seems impossible.
that's brutal. You're flying off into the wall, like.
I reckon I could do it for a minute.
That's not what you said earlier.
I said 2 minutes earlier.
Hold on, I heard 20 minutes at some stage in the preview.
No.
Oh no, he's saying 20 minutes at 11, I think.
I was saying what I actually ran for 20 minutes, 25
Well, you're
minutes.
saying 20 minutes at 11, and they're saying that's 13. Unless you're 11 kilometres, you're not going 11 miles.
No, kilometres.
Okay, sorry. That's not right.
I think that's about 6 or 7 miles.
Yeah, there. I suppose
5/8 or so. Yeah.
But 20.6 in kilometres. I think most machines are in kilometres, so you're talking 20.6. I think your average person could do that for 30 seconds, minute.
That's brutal, yeah.
Pete, you're saying no? Longer or less? Less. The average person? Oh, maybe less. The average person at the gym. So I was saying the issue, obviously, with Kipchoge and everyone running is that all things are relative. So if they're all doing that speed, none of them are doing that speed. You watch them and it does look like they're just out for a trot.
Yeah.
Now, a reasonably paced one. But we have no appreciation. The reason that tweet always does well after every big marathon is because everyone reads it and goes, oh my God, I can't believe it. It's unbelievable. They're going so fast. Because they don't look like they're going so fast. So, and I've heard it suggested before, so this is not my idea as such, but I really do think, and every man at all of these events, the 100 metres in lane 9, the swimming pool in lane 8, somewhere kind of average human
We
populace
saw it with the swimming pool,
jumps in.
though. Do you remember, I said Eddie the Eagle, actually. I got a text off a friend of mine corrected me. It was Eric the Eel.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
In the Olympics. I can't remember the circumstances as why he was swimming, but it was they're trying to get developing countries. But he was genuine. And it was, the way they do the heats as well. Like, they're done by standard.
Yeah.
So there was only 3 people in the heat, and it was like 100 meters freestyle, I think. And the other 2 were finished 5 minutes, like. And poor old Eric was still swimming, but the whole stadium. I thought it was in Sydney.
Do I recall, yeah, a
Sydney
heat
or
happened
Athens?
as well where there was 3 or 4 people in the heat and the rest of the heat ended up getting disqualified because of a false start. And then you had one guy in the pool who was literally just splashing his way up to one end and splashing his way back to qualify.
But you see, you can't have him on his own either. You need them next to each other. Like, it has to be lane 9 of the 100 metres. It's basically...
How good is the everyman?
As I said, the reason he was on his own was because everyone was finished 5 minutes.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
So
there was 3 people in the heat, and they were people who weren't getting even to the semi-finals. Like they weren't,
what you mean,
you know,
okay.
and they were finished 5 minutes.
So it works. It's both...
They were dried off. Like,
but the main issue is it's one, unbelievably informative to the sport viewer. Like, it's a television revolution, and 2, it's hilarious.
It would be quite funny.
Yeah.
I'd like to see the 100 metres. I would like the
100 metres would be great.
100 metres, it's made for.
I feel like that's the only one that really.
I know. The 400 metres, I think, it'd be quality as well.
Yeah.
The lactic acid sniper.
Like, how experienced is this control, Joe? This is the key. Like, are you going to have someone going for the hurdles who's going to knock every hurdle over because they've never jumped over one
I was
before?
thinking about that because we brought this up in the news round, and there were certain events where this just works perfectly, and someone said Formula 1, and that could be dangerous. But so for Formula 1, you get like a cycle lane where someone goes around in a Formula 1 car with kind of like the bowling bumpers to stop them killing themselves. And that way...
You're putting a non-elite driver even in this situation behind the wheel.
Yeah, 100%. And they're very safe, the cars now.
they get their own average Joe pit crew as well.
Sorry, we put that out. You'll have 2 million people apply for that.
Yeah.
No problem. And
Who's
then,
insuring it?
Yeah, there also has to be a quality control to make sure that the person isn't like a secret good athlete or terrible, not able to run 400
Yeah, are they
metres.
actually eligible
It has
to
to
win
be
here?
that in between.
No, they're not eligible to win.
They like a curry, they like a pint,
Yeah.
but they do a bit of training.
Yeah, and for certain technical sports, like you mentioned the pole vault, which could be dangerous.
Yeah.
You don't
I think
just-
for everyone.
You don't just get me to do that. You get like, you go to like a standard club pole vaulter in Chapel Izzard,
Right.
and you say, you're up.
See you at the Paris Olympics.
Yeah. And they keep going all the way. So it, like that's the relative importance. So if it's the high jump, as I was saying to you, they're not eliminated early on. As the height keeps going up, they keep trying. So it gets more and more ridiculous as they try and
Yeah.
like, even
Takes a little bit away from the event, I would say.
Does it?
Well, I mean, the poor people who are trying to win, everyone's just worried about, like, Joe, like, running into the high jump and not even jumping and just falling over.
I think it would lead to an appreciation of, because I was at the 2012 Olympic final, and it was only being there and being that close.
The 100 metres, I'm guessing.
Yeah, the 100 metres that you kind of realise, oh my god.
I think the one time I went to the horse racing as well.
Yeah.
When they're going past you, like, my God.
So I don't know, do you get a pony there or
Surely the person's allowed to be on a horse.
Okay.
But that's a waste of a horse then.
Look, I don't want to. That's not
Well, like
going
in
to
this image of somebody going along the end of the Grand National on a pony, slowly but surely getting to the end.
Yeah. Obviously, wouldn't work in football, wouldn't work in most team sports. But the events where it would work, it genuinely.
Would you not put someone out in the wing in the Six Nations?
Yeah.
No.
Or average showing goals in the football match.
The big loose jersey.
If you had time and like Johnny Sexton makes an amazing conversion, you might bring on the AIL out half and say, right, go on, try and kick that kick.
And there wouldn't be that much of a difference in standard in kicking, would there?
Probably not.
Yeah.
So no, it's more the endurance events. Tour de France.
Tour de France, impossible.
I think that would really show how phenomenal those athletes are, though.
Yeah, well, they'd never make it.
They wouldn't finish each day.
They wouldn't get.
He said back tomorrow.
I'd say they wouldn't get through one day.
Well, maybe you get a fresh meat every day. But look, it wouldn't be the focus of it. It wouldn't be like.
It sounds like it would be.
Sounds like
It's like, hold on, we've got to the final. 2 world records have been beaten in the high jump final. We are down to the gold medal. They are on their 9th jump
Joe
as
again.
just 2 of them. But we have to go. We have to just. Here's Joe first. He has to do it again.
It would be as subtle as when they have the world record line in a race ahead of where the actual contenders are. The 100 metres would be on. George Hamilton would be only commentating on the race, but in the background you'd see some lad running up on the
News now.
Yeah.
Watching it from the back.
And are they wearing like the proper gear, or are they doing like that Tommy Tiernan joke with the saw doctor
I know
t-shirt?
they're in proper gear. Maybe they get a GoPro on their head just to add to the.
That'd be great. That would be great. That's a great. From the 100 metres, from that perspective.
Yeah.
How quickly they're taking off like a car.
Yeah.
I do quite like the mental image of everyone celebrating after the 100 metres. You know, they usually hug each
Yeah.
other when they're flat out, and then the camera just pans back to the guy who's
your man.
halfway down the track.
I think it'd be brilliant because back to Kipchoge, doesn't it genuinely when they run the marathon look
It looks,
Yeah.
average enough? They're
Yeah.
taking it easy for these 5 miles.
I think I don't know if I have the stat like you gave it in what happens on the gym. in the gym. What the hell is wrong with me? But I think it was like 17-second 100 meters was the average. Like 17 seconds is not even double the world record for 100 meters.
17 seconds is what the average
is the average
every
100 meters of his marathon run, the one in Berlin a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
You know, like think about that. Like he's running every 100 meters for 26 miles in less than double the world record.
Because for a second I thought you said there the average person in the street would run the 100 meters in 17 seconds.
I doubt it. Would they?
Probably
That's
not.
what I'm saying. Would you beat Kipchoge over 100 meters if he's running the start of a marathon and you're just doing the 100 meters? I'd say you'd struggle.
Wouldn't bet the mortgage on it, no.
So I don't know if like 17 seconds, I would say is quite a fast time for an average Joe Soap.
And I think we could really get good at it. Again, it would make the marathon a better watch, and you could do something whereby every 5 miles, new person in.
Tag in, like a relay.
Yeah, to show like not only are they beating people by just a hard to fathom amount, but actually even a fresh person, they're just cutting for dust as
so
well.
26 people do 1 mile each. You hand the baton over after a mile.
It's a bit like, the way someone tries to run along a cyclist at the Tour de France. So imagine Kipchoge is running and the next man in gets to start level with Kipchoge, fresh. It's like, how long can you stay with him? And then you watch him fall back. Add a completely new layer to the marathon and would look.
Just thinking,
This is going to be sold to a Danish production
Todd
company
Bowley.
soon.
it doesn't work in one-on-one sports either, unfortunately.
You just said I'm like Todd Bowley.
There you go.
Marathon's not fun
The
enough.
ultimate praise. Could you put someone in a doubles tennis match?
No, I don't. You wouldn't watch that. Like, it has to be unobtrusive. I know we're talking it up here as a big central.
We kind of have it in golf and nobody
Yeah.
cares.
How does it play out in the pro-ams?
Oh, good.
What do you mean good?
Good
Nobody
what?
cares. Nobody watches it.
No. Look, I don't like it all the time because it can slow the play up, and often the events aren't very important. But there is quite something to watch. 9 handicap golfer, a good golfer, playing a par 3 and hitting a shot followed by a pro. Suddenly you're like, oh my god, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Or
Yeah,
watching
9. I play with a guy who's 9 every week, and I think he's brilliant. And then you see him against Rory McIlroy. Yeah.
and even watching amateurs putt compared to the best. So it kind of golf is the closest where you get the everyman of varying standards playing with pros. Somebody says, and it's a fair enough suggestion, why not get another athlete from a different discipline who's recognisable to provide a benchmark, like the lads who come over and play hurling or football on that toughest show.
Toughest trade.
I quite like this idea, if we're going to stay in the athletics realm, that you get someone from a different discipline in the running to run, say like get a sprinter to have to run an endurance event, or get someone who's medium or long distance to do the sprint.
Like we can play around with it.
Why not?
There's no bad ideas, but I do think you need an everyman in there.
So you can switch up the athletes, but also every man.
Still there.
What you're suggesting is the sporting version of karaoke. Mere mortals thinking they can do it just as well as the pros when they so obviously can't, says Caroline. That's precisely it.
Yeah. Although I don't think anyone would think that they're going to win, because otherwise, why wouldn't they be
No,
competing?
it'd be minus the hubris. Like, I think a close-up of their fear as the 100 metres is about to start.
Do they get to have used the things before, the blocks?
Do they get to? Yeah, no, they get to warm up and they get, like, you give them their best shot. They get 2 weeks' notice.
2 weeks.
They get the good lycra.
Yeah.
Boxing.
Yeah. There we go. That's all I have to say about that.
I like the freestyle 100 metres text there, Joe, but that's look. That's
Sorry, 100 metres freestyle in the pool, from the belly flop at the start to the lung full of pool water at the 50-metre turnaround to struggling out of the pool at the end with their Bermudas halfway down the arse. That's Olympic gold.
See, now, you put it like that and you're thinking,
It's entertainment.
like, I mean, it's more interesting than Michael Phelps.
Well, I think it would help us appreciate Michael Phelps all the more.
I think so. I think I probably appreciate him more by seeing him beating the best swimmers in the world on a consistent basis. But
Yeah.
I'm not saying your idea is not without merit.
Thank you.
Somebody here says it's a classic radio and a great idea. So, you've killed 2 birds with 1 stone there, John.
There we go. We'll move on. I'm curious for your thoughts on this. So we chatted about this a little bit before coming on air. So
Sorry, can I just interrupt there because
Yeah.
somebody's made a very, very good point.
Hang on, let me guess. Is this a reason as to why this shouldn't happen?
No, it's this is we're using the marathon as the example, and so it says, hold on, every marathon in the world is full of random amateurs, so your idea already exists.
Oh my God,
which is a very fair point.
That is so true.
They're all dressed up as like Mr. Blobby and stuff.
We are trying to sauce this up a little bit though, where it's not just some guy that finishes after 4 hours. We're trying to make this a bit more saucy.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It is a very fair point.
No, it's really fair.
And they're finished hours, and then it's like, it's back to like Gabby Logan interviews with like people at the like 4 mile mark.
But they should be tracked. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you pick one out, you do, and the thing is, like, imagine doing an interview with her before the race. Like, how often do you train? Oh, once a week. How you feeling? Yeah, no, good. And like, build them into it, and then you've got someone running along them with a microphone, and how's it going? And
it sounds like you're sending someone horrifically ill prepared to do a marathon.
that's the point. It's an average person. Or it can be a club. You can get 2 or 3 in a marathon. You can get like the club runner, the average person. But it's really just to show off the brilliance of Kipchoge. It's not to demean the event. It's the opposite. 4 players were dropped from the Offaly under-14s development squad because they played in a soccer match. When did this happen again?
It was earlier this year. I think it was March or April.
Okay.
It's tail end of the schoolboys football season.
I think the reason it's coming to the news again is that the rules are almost being set for
Yeah, I think there's
code of conduct.
what's almost like a fresh code of conduct that's come out for the Offaly development panels this week. So I think one of the parents of one of the players who was dropped last year put it on social media, and therefore I think it's still in the rounds again.
All right,
I think that's the genesis of where it's got back out.
Okay, so I think initially this was misreported as GAA banned a bunch of lads because they played soccer, and that was a misrepresentation of it. So I think in effect what happened was there was an under-14 SFAI Cup, so big game, FAI Cup for under-14s, a quarter-final. Edenderry Town are playing against Shamrock Rovers. However, for these unfortunate 4 players, it clashed with their Offaly training session. They were part of the Offaly development squad, and this was an important training session, and they chose to play the important soccer match instead, and so they were dropped for missing the important training session, rather than for the fact they were playing another sport. If it had been, rehearsal with their band or theatre practice or I presume a hurling match, it would have been the same outcome. Is this kind of fair enough at that age, or do we feel this is OTT? I think, Mick, you're more on the side that this is a little bit much for that age.
So I was saying in the news round, look, and you're laying it out there, and again, I think we should move off the specifics of this particular story, but like even taking into account like that's a big game. You're playing against Shamrock Rovers, and it's and it's an actual game, and just because you're on this county team and you've made a commitment to it doesn't necessarily grant that manager, I don't think that necessarily should mean, well, that's your team, everything else should be secondary. I don't think coaches of children should have the ability to make that hierarchy for them. Now, that's obviously disputable because people will say, look, we're coming together as a group and this is the commitment that you're making. As I was saying in the news round, I won't labour because I'll let everybody else in, is I just feel that when you're talking about children in sport, the priority is their development, their enjoyment and what they're getting out of it. And I think as much as it's important to have that togetherness, as much as it's important to have rules to a certain extent and to do your best and to try and get the most out of it, I think ultimately you have to understand that there are varied interests and they should all be catered for wheresoever possible because it's important. And I mean, there's loads of evidence to suggest that kids are better off playing multiple sports, being involved and seeing as an older teenager maybe what their thing might be if they are at that level where they maybe have to choose. But in general, they're more well-rounded and it's just better for society. I think if kind of kids are let find their niche rather than kind of being pushed into an early decision and saying, right, you're a footballer, head down, I want you in this group because you're going to be on the under-14 Offaly team and then you're going to be on the under-15s and 16s, then you're going to play minor. And it's just like, and that's your life. It's been decided for you. So that's just where I come from on it, yeah.
All that makes perfect sense as well. The only thing I'd be more kind of concerned about, or not concerned, I suppose interested in, is the fact like seeing it as, or not regarding it as an end in and of itself. So what's interesting to me in that is like that, so we're looking at under 14 and straight away assuming that it's how it'll develop them for under 16 or under or minor, whatever else. But it's like it's actually a thing in and of itself, and it's like it's to win at that age it's not something just because like most of those players will never get anywhere near probably an awfully senior team. So in and of itself, it's something to actually do and achieve. And just because you're 13 or 14 at the time, it doesn't devalue that. You take it with you, and it's I do kind of understand it, like that. It's I don't know. Like there's certain things, if that's kind of what's required, I suppose. But it's hard to kind of start talking like about children as if they're adults having to go to a job or something like.
Why is it required, I suppose, is other than that's just the culture that we've developed over years, that like, right, there's a very important training session for the big game. And like, there is that in a way, but at the same time, it's like, you're telling me that a cup quarter final, and again, I do realise we're on the specifics of this thing, but let's just treat it all as one big example. Like that, a football cup quarter final with the guys you've grown up with against Shamrock Rovers, high end stuff. Like again, just because we don't know the ins and outs of the way football works at a junior level in the way that we do GEA, I think, because it's more simple maybe and probably wider reported, doesn't mean it's any less then, you know. And it's just like this idea that, right, you know what, you've made your decision, you've gone to get outside this team. I feel it's a very reductive way of looking at things, I have to say. It doesn't mean they can't do all those things that you're saying, Arthur. In fact, taking it away from them, the football side of things, to the GEA side of things, is not giving them the chance to achieve that end in itself of having a good experience on that under-14 team.
I think the nub of the issue comes down to when you feel specialisation is required. And there's a few different schools of thoughts on it, but I think generally in recent times the belief would be this is almost like the Roger Federer versus Tiger Woods is how it's often portrayed, which is Tiger Woods specialised in golf at a very young age, and therefore that helped him throughout his career, that he had golf as a laser focus, while in the case of someone like Roger Federer, he played multiple sports, and then he was only about, I think, 16 or 17 when he decided to focus entirely on becoming a top-class junior player, and then ends up becoming one of the best tennis players of all time. But he feels that playing the other sports benefited him going into tennis. Is 14, and particularly like the focus is there, and we had the discussion on Lunchtime Live here on News Talk yesterday about under 16 and 17 Waterford development panels and lads going off playing soccer and then not being able to play for the minor and under 17 teams at Waterford. Is 14 old enough to say to a player that you should have to specialise in one sport at that point? Because increasingly you will have to make that decision that you can only play one sport if you have to commit as fully as the commitment is required in this particular case. Like, is 14 too young for players to be signing a code of conduct to say that they're not going to be wearing jewellery and that they're going to do X, Y and Z? Like, to me that seems very, very strong. But on the other hand, I can understand where one of the main reasons that these, and to bring it back to the specific example about Offaly, that many of the parents felt it was a requirement, many supporters felt it was a requirement, was that development panels became something a little bit wishy-washy. The players went in, trained along with the county for a little while, then popped back out, and they were never taken that seriously. And now this was an idea to try and improve the quality of the development. And there is an argument to say that if you decide to commit to playing on something you opt into ultimately, you should be 100% committed to it, because are you letting the other guys down in the development squad if you opt to go off and play soccer on a given weekend?
Yeah. Like, I think we all agree hard and fast rules are tricky, and you'd love an ideal world where the clash didn't happen, or for instance, if there's that many players, as in 4 in this instance, that the Offaly coach couldn't say, oh look, I'm conscious there's 4 of you involved in this game. Everybody, buy-in from everybody. Can we move the training session to later in the evening or the next day? And if the lads are too tired to train, at least they're there and they're on the sideline, and that's it's quite a mature, agreeable way of doing this.
Communication is exactly what should happen, because I think in this case, Tullamore Rugby Club and Edenderry Rugby Club had to move around some of their underage fixtures, because again, some of their best players are naturally going in, and you don't want to be going into a game where you're losing, say, 3 or 4 of your best players because development training is on a Saturday.
And so, like, I'm not talking about the Offaly case here. I don't know the name of the manager. I don't know anything about the specifics. So I'm making a broader point here. I don't think what you want in those instances is somebody who's in any way militant when they're in charge of these things and immovable. I think you want flexibility when kids are involved. But I do think, and 14's getting pretty close to it, because I played soccer and GA very seriously in my teenage years, a lot of them. And it's around that age where you do kind of have to prioritise, and you do have to say, well, we're old enough to make a commitment to each other. Training sessions are important. Are we all going to be there unless there's a good excuse? Yeah, we are. And so I take Mick's point entirely, and it's unfortunate. But I think if it's at the level of inter-county, as opposed to, say, club. Like, I think if a club manager turned around and said, well, you're off the club team now, then that club manager would want to have a serious think about him or herself. And, you know, I think there'd have to be an intervention to say cop on. But when you're kind of at representative level, be it in soccer or intercounty, that's kind of an extra demand here. Like, you're the best of those around, so if you're not going to make training, well, what do I say to the other 25 lads who are here every single week and you're playing a soccer match? So I think it's unfortunate they're kicked off for good. Feels a bit extreme, but I can see how, well, look, you're not playing the match now next week, or, you know, there's got to be repercussion. It's just, unfortunately, that's the real world, isn't it?
Yeah, but
like,
you think
we all have to
missing
make
training
choices.
for like a valid sporting reason because you do play for another team, I don't think it lessens your commitment. It just means you have another commitment. And like, there's lads who like go like, well, probably at an older level, but like, you'll like not be training because they're not that committed, or they're off drinking or whatever, and like,
No, I get that.
but they're good, and the manager puts them back in. That's where you have an issue with the group. I don't think you have an issue with the group because guys are off playing another game.
No, it's a very genuine excuse.
They're all friends as well. Don't forget
I get that.
you
Where
know?
would that end, by the way? Because I take your holistic point very seriously. What if they said, well, look, I've got theatre rehearsal and it's you know, we've got opening night tomorrow and I need to be there, or someone else says, look, I'm in a band, we're after getting this great opportunity to play a gig. Why are they less important than sport?
They're not.
You know, so
They're not. I just think
and
that
so
we
you have to.
have.
If you're a coach, you'd have to draw a line.
I suppose
somewhere.
my point is that you have the starting point of acceptance and not of, look, again, we're 100% not talking about Offaly here. This is the example that brought.
Yeah.
No, but it's important to say
yeah.
that. It's not just from covering our backs. It's important to say that because we don't know the situation.
No.
But we do know this, and there's a text in there that this doesn't just happen in GA. It happens to GA teams as well, and that's fair, right? But you have to remember that there's a lot of this that comes from coaches. You know, there was who was saying this recently? There's like coaches who think they're Pep Guardiola, you know, and it's like, and they think their team is the most important thing in the world, and you know, winning is important for these kids, and it's more important than it's for them. It's not for the team, you know. And I don't think that's that widespread, but we see it a lot, you know. And I just think surely our starting point is, right, what are you interested in? What are you passionate about? You're interested in both theatre and football. Right, they're your two things. Let's see what way it goes. And you know what? For your sake, I'm going to do what I can here. But ultimately, it will come to a point where we have this kind of clash that's not workable, right? And then you make a decision. But that's not the first time it happens. That's not when you make that decision. Or a match versus training, for example. You know, it becomes a point where it says, do you know what? This other thing you're doing means that you can't contribute to this group. That's, I think, where you draw the line. I think that's an easy enough case-by-case basis.
Yeah, I think there's also an argument to be made about development squads particularly, because this is what it comes back to, and the discussion on Lunchtime Live was about development squads to a large extent as well. You could argue if 3 or 4 guys are away for whatever reason, that should give an opportunity to 3 or 4 other players to play, particularly when at that age level you're meant to be playing blitzes as opposed to playing competitively, and you should be making full use of your panel. There's definitely an argument to be made that coaches should be understanding of it. Like, I think in the case that we're talking about right now, certainly the feeling from the coaches was that they hadn't got a reason which was required within the code of conduct which was signed up. But the reason the players said that they couldn't give, the reason was that they were afraid that if they said they were going playing another sport, that would be frowned upon by the management. I think it should get to a point where a management can have a mature conversation with the player or their parents and make a decision for what's best for the kid. Because it's bad for, you know, ultimately these are children. For children to be missing out in sport and a chance to play with their mates over this.
You know, it should be avoided some way. A few texts in. I was a coach with county minors for a few years, and a week before championship, our goalie told us the local League of Ireland under-17 soccer club told him if he played for us, then he'd be dropped from the soccer club. He didn't talk for us. We didn't go to the press. We accepted the young lad's choice, despite the fact we never made anyone make a similar choice. Happens in every single sport. We lost lads that year to soccer and rugby after pressure from their coaches. Didn't take to social media, go to the press. You seem to only hear about it when it's an issue with the GAA. Yeah, I think it's probably all sports. And again, we were making clear as well, I don't think the GAA were anti-soccer. They were just anti-not committing to us.
And it wasn't the GAA, it was the GAA team in question. I think that's probably important as well. Yeah.
No, it's not the whole, oh, it's a garrison game you're playing, how dare you. Like, it's not that. It's every team wants to almost mark their territory, you know. You were talking earlier about the power and control that comes with being a coach in the Women's League in America. Well, very different to this, but I'll continue the text. Then to give that coach of the under-14s team a bit of a pass on the soccer match feeds into the control thing. Let the lads do the thing they love and not be afraid of their coaches, says AJ. Oh, it's such a different situation, AJ, to what's happened in America. I think that we can't draw too much into it. Somebody else says, by the way, Edenderry Town are a huge team in Leinster football. Their seniors were top division of the LSL last year. It's as high a level as playing for lower level county like Offaly, says on Carlo. Yeah, I know. I've played against Edenderry plenty of times. Like, it's great tradition.
They're going really well. They've got a few teams. They're underage are doing very, very well indeed. I know they got beaten by Shamrock Rovers, I think, heavily enough in that game, but the fact that they were getting to the knockout stage of the SFAI just goes to show how they were going.
We're pretty much out of time. We didn't get to everything we were hoping to get to, but sure, we can pick it up next week. Like, we were going to talk about what a freak Haaland is and who he's comparable to in other sports.
He'll score another hat-trick this weekend, don't worry. We'll have next Tuesday
week.
for that.
Yeah, yeah. Because
have you got a one person answer? One person?
No, I was saying what I said to you, which was, we're all sitting around going, God, have you ever seen anything like this? And a part of me is thinking, well, like, yeah, we just saw Messi and Ronaldo.
Yeah,
so I would
add the original Ronaldo in 96, 97, when he was breaking all sorts of records and was incredible before his knee popped in 98.
Yeah.
But he was...
Haaland feels like he's created to be the perfect footballer. I'm not saying that he is the perfect footballer. I would still prefer a Messi. I'm not arguing he's the best of all time, but he just feels like a unique, like, athlete who's also good at scoring goals.
Nevin said last night, if you take the best attribute of all the best strikers and just funnel them all into him, he's sort of the best at everything so far.
Yeah. I wouldn't...
Maybe not dribbler.
Really,
Definitely not dribbler.
No, his dribbling and passing aren't as good as some other players, but he has incredible attributes. So.
I suppose it's his size. That's the kind of the Hulk quality.
Yeah.
We'll come back to that next week and a few other things. My thanks to Mick and to Arthur and to Will. That was A Slight Tangent.
Off the ball on News Talk.